Have you ever felt like you're caught in a crossfire of arguments designed not to convince you, but to confuse and divide you? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and decode the playbook that's used to spread hate and division. These aren't just random opinions. Nope, they're carefully crafted tactics aimed at the heart of our society. So let's jump in and learn how to spot them, and more importantly, how to stand up to them. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's just ground ourselves in one core principle. Human dignity. It is not up for debate. It's not some political football to be tossed around. It's the absolute, non-negotiable baseline for everything. Keep this in mind because every single tactic we're about to break down is a direct attack on this fundamental idea. So let's be really clear about what we mean by mass manipulation. We're not talking about a healthy difference of opinion. No way. We're talking about a whole system that's designed to devalue and degrade entire groups of people. It's a tool that's meant to turn neighbors into strangers and to make our diversity look like a threat. And make no mistake, the goal is to cause very real harm. All right, here's our game plan for today. We're going to look at 3 main strategies for manipulation: how they create enemies, how they distort reality, and how they work to shift our social norms. And then we'll get to the most important part, what you and I can do about it, our democratic response. First up, strategy number 1, creating enemies. This is the oldest trick in the book, right? A classic divide and conquer move. The whole point is to slice society into a simple us versus them. Because when we're divided, working together becomes nearly impossible. So how do you create an enemy? Well, the first method is the scapegoat. The way it works is brilliant in its simplicity and also brilliantly cynical. You take a really complicated problem, like a housing crisis or a job insecurity, and you blame it all on one specific, usually vulnerable group. It gives people a simple answer and a target for all their frustration, and it perfectly distracts from the real complex causes. The way we fight back is by refusing the easy answer. We have to name the real causes and point the responsibility back to where it belongs, usually with policy and power. Okay, next up is dehumanization. And you got to pay attention to the language here. When people are described with words like wave or flood, it paints them as a mindless natural disaster. When they're called parasites or vermin, it frames them as an infestation that needs to be, removed. This is never an accident. The goal is to strip people of their humanity, because it's just so much easier to deny rights to someone you no longer see as a fellow human being. Our job is to call out this language every single time and loudly reaffirm our shared humanity. Now, for a tactic that is just pure twisted genius, victim blaming. This is where the group with power and privilege paints itself as the real victim. You hear it all the time, right? You can't say anything anymore. What that really means is, I'm being challenged on my privilege to speak without consequence. It's a complete deflection. The key here is to call out the actual power imbalances and bring in the facts. Use real data to show who is actually facing discrimination. So, okay, once you've created an enemy and you've managed to shift the blame, what's the next logical step? You have to build a whole fake reality to justify that hatred. And that brings us right to our second big strategy: distorting reality. The thinking is pretty simple. If you can't win with the facts on your side, well, you just create your own. This whole strategy is about twisting information to build a world that runs on fear and mistrust. And this distortion often kicks off with good old-fashioned fear-mongering. You see an isolated crime committed by one person, and suddenly it's used as proof that their entire group is dangerous. This creates a climate of panic, which, surprise, surprise, is then used to argue for really harsh authoritarian laws. The only rational response is to insist on context. We have to separate one-off incidents from actual statistical trends and focus our energy on prevention, not panic. And this is closely related to using anecdotes over data. Look, a single emotional story can feel so much more real than a dry, boring spreadsheet, and manipulators absolutely know this. They use these personal stories to make prejudice feel like a legitimate lived experience. The right way to handle this is to first acknowledge the story, but then immediately ask, how representative is this really? What does the bigger picture, the actual data, tell us? Now for one of the most slippery tactics out there: just asking questions. This is how conspiracy theories get smuggled into a normal conversation, while giving the speaker total deniability. Hey, I'm not saying it's true, I'm just asking the question. The response has to be to cut through that. Expose the hidden assumption that's baked into their question and demand actual evidence for the claim they're trying to sneak in. And the last method in this section is to flood the zone. You know this feeling. The goal is pure exhaustion. You overwhelm people with so much outrage, so many scandals, so many contradictory stories that they just give up, and cynicism kicks in. The phrase "you just don't know what to believe anymore" is the exact intended outcome. Because when truth feels relative, that's when radical ideas can really take root. The only defense is to practice what some people call slow media. Focus on fewer, better sources, and always prioritize what's actually verifiable over the noise. Okay, so let's recap. You've created an enemy, you've distorted reality to make them seem like a huge threat. So, what's the end game? What's the ultimate goal? It's to make all of this feel normal, acceptable even. That is the long game, and it's our third and final strategy: shifting norms. This is all about the slow, patient process of making hateful ideas mainstream. And this strategy often begins with dog whistles. These are words that sound innocent enough to most people, but they signal a specific racist or hateful meaning to an in-group. Words like globalists or cultural Marxism aren't academic terms in these contexts. They're codes for old anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. The only way to disarm them is to decode these whistles out loud, in public, and explain exactly where their toxic ideas come from. And here's the most important part. You have to finish the sentence. It's not enough to just say, "Hey, that's a dog whistle." That doesn't help anyone. You have to explain why. For example, this is a racist code because it comes from these specific hate movements and it's used to push this very harmful idea. That's how you break the code for everyone listening. Next is the clever exploitation of false balance. This is when the media, in an attempt to be neutral, gives equal weight and airtime to objective facts and to a dehumanizing ideology. But listen, there is no other side to human rights. Presenting hate as just another controversial point of view is one of the fastest ways to normalize it. We have to draw a line and refuse to host a debate on whether or not other people are fully human. And all of these tactics lead to the ultimate prize: shifting the Overton window. Now, the Overton window is basically the range of ideas that the public finds acceptable to talk about. The strategy is to constantly push that boundary outwards. What was completely unsayable yesterday is framed as just breaking a taboo today. Then it becomes a brave truth, and before you know it, it's just normal. The only defense is to hold the line, draw clear boundaries, and contradict these ideas early, loudly, and often. All right, we've laid out the entire playbook. We've seen the tactics. So now, for the most important part, how do we fight back? This final section is all about our democratic response, how we can reclaim the conversation from those who want to poison it. First, I want to give you a really powerful rule of thumb you can use. The next time you hear a story, ask yourself, who is this story blaming? Who is it punching? If a narrative consistently punches down at people with less power while staying completely silent about those with more power, it is almost certainly propaganda. So here it is, your toolkit for action. It's a simple 4-step process. First, recognize the pattern you're seeing. Is it scapegoating? Is it a dog whistle? Second, put the claim in context. Third, counter it, but with facts and clarity, not with more outrage. And finally, and this is the most important one, act in solidarity with the people who are being targeted. So please, remember these 3 things. First, countering hate actually works, but you have to be clear, consistent, and calm. Second, share reliable information. Don't just amplify the outrage. And third, always, always protect people, not prejudices. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. What's one of these manipulative phrases that you've heard recently, maybe online or in a conversation? Now that you know the playbook, how can you use your democratic response to push back? Thanks for tuning in. Stay informed and stay engaged.